And so it begins, my review series of Star Trek Picard Season 3, Episode 1, entitled The Next Generation. And, as you know...
I've seen everything. I've seen it all.
Yes, I've seen all 10 episodes, so I know what's coming down the line, and I can tell you throughout the season, and indeed from pretty much the first scene, there are hints and clues pointing to the wider narrative. When you watch it a second time, it'll all start to make sense. You'll pick up on these things. We begin each episode with this blue text, and with a familiar font. But the first episode begins with this, in the 25th century, reminiscent of Star Trek II and Star Trek III. You'll especially notice thematic connections to Star Trek III in this series because, like me, Terry Matalas's favourite Trek film is The Search for Spock. There are nice Trek touches and motifs like this throughout the season. Most notable is the musical score, which takes elements of all of the shows and films, but also includes a wonderful new original theme for the USS Titan A. Well done to Stephen Barton for his musical composition for this season. Brilliant work. I hope a long-form medley or suite is released in due course. Trek music should make you think as much as it makes you feel, and Stephen has thoroughly accomplished both in spades. So, here we go. Spoilers ahead. In deep space, a Federation starship is stalked by an alien vessel. Inside, we see a computer playing Captain Picard's log from the Best of Both Worlds for some reason. Maybe that's important for later this season, and I should know, because...
I've seen everything.
There also appears to be some medical equipment, a box with the name Lieutenant Commander Jack R. Crusher, and then there's Beverly. She's under attack, and a young man is shouting at her from another room, but she shuts the door on him immediately as he protests. Crusher has to fight some intruders, which she does with proficiency. By the way, Crusher has a kind of Doctors Without Borders role in this series, so she goes to different regions of space beyond the Federation border, rendering medical assistance. She has to flee, so she leaves a distress call for Admiral Jean-Luc Picard before she gets her ship to go to warp. The new shorter and better opening credits then roll. Back on Earth at Chateau Picard, for the last time I'm glad to say, Picard and now girlfriend Laris are having some of his personal items moved. They're discussing the famous painting of the Enterprise D that we all know. Sadly, this is the only episode with Orla Brady for the entire season. Picard wants to give the painting to Geordi, who is running the Fleet Museum. Yes, try to remember that fact for later. It will be important in a few episodes' time. Laris and Picard are supposed to be heading off to Sheltok 4. Later that evening, Picard hears a communicator chirping away, and after rifling through his things, he finds that it's his 20-year-old Enterprise D communicator. Beverly has sent an encoded message to him specifically to this communicator. Her message includes coordinates, along with the message Hellbird. She tells him no Starfleet and to trust no one. So off Picard goes to Guinan's 10 Forward Bar, the one in San Francisco, to meet Riker. Also, for those wondering, Whoopi Goldberg doesn't appear as Guinan this season. Riker is his usual Rikery awesome self. There's a gag in there about how Guinan is now hawking starship models at her bar, but no one wants the fat one, which is what people call the Galaxy-class Enterprise D. Riker and Picard's relationship, in my view, is the highlight of this season, especially the Hunt for the Red October type scenes on the Titan A in the early episodes of the season. They speak briefly about speeches that they'll be giving at the upcoming Frontier Day, an important celebration for Starfleet, and an important plot point this season. Also, Riker has taken some time away from his family, but don't worry, this isn't Han and Leia in The Force Awakens. They didn't break up. Trust me.
I've seen everything.
Picard and Riker sit down and discuss Crusher's distress call. For starters, the coordinates don't seem to be all that important, unless paired with the secret code Hellbird, which Crusher mentioned in her distress call. Riker explains to Picard what Hellbird is. It was a computer virus that was on the Enterprise D when Picard was assimilated. It scrambled the ship's navigational systems and added 3 to every digit. Riker makes the adjustment. It's the Righton system outside Federation space. They speculate about what's out there and why Crusher cut them off over 20 years ago. No one has spoken to her the entire time. They need a ship, but they can't go to Starfleet, as per Crusher's instructions. Anyway, Riker has an idea. They leave the bar, but they're being watched. Next, we cut to Rafi on Metalis Prime, nice one Terry. She's doing some investigation in various dens of ill repute in the seedy side of the universe, hanging out with lowlives, smugglers, and underworld undesirable types in order to complete a secret mission. As I've said before in these first 2 episodes, Rafi's stuff gets old fast. It is ultimately leading somewhere important, but given the dark lighting and antagonistic and unpleasant nature of the characters and situations she encounters, you'd be forgiven for thinking you were watching bits of seasons 1 or 2. Thankfully, your patience will be rewarded by the end of episode 2, I assure you. Now, back to the good stuff. Picard and Riker head to the Earth-orbiting starbase with a ruse in mind. They plan on pretending that they're doing a surprise inspection of the USS Titan A. Riker was, of course, the captain of the previous Titan. This Neo-Constitution class grew on me as the season went on, combining the best of the 23rd and 24th century starship designs to create a new 25th century edition, and I also love starbase shots, evoking the cinematic quality of the original series films. Riker explains the plan. They intend to convince Captain Shaw to head to the border of Federation space. They'll take a shuttle to the Riken system from there. But he'll need some convincing. 7 of 9 is the first officer of the Titan. On the bridge, Picard meets LaForge's daughter, Sydney, echoes of Sulu's daughter on the Enterprise B in Generations. They go to see Shaw, who's having dinner, and as gruff and arrogant as this guy seems, he does grow on you as the season progresses, but he's no fan of Picard or Riker. He throws a few verbal barbs their way, stating that the inspection will be boring, because they won't be blowing things up, engaging in battle, crash landing expectedly or unexpectedly, the usual for Riker and Picard. Riker tells him that they want to change course and head to the Riken system, but he tells Shaw that it's so that they can make a great story for Frontier Day, a chance to show the efficiency of the new engines and such. And Picard says they'll make a final inspection at Deep Space 4, which brings the conversation to a full stop. Shaw smells a rat. Picard was unaware that DS4 has been shut down for over a year. Shaw refuses to change course, bringing their plans to a grinding halt. I love the conflict here. Picard tries to pull rank, but Shaw tells him he's retired and that Riker is a captain without a chair. Suffice to say, he's having none of this. Meantime, Rafi is getting instructions on the La Sirena from an unknown Starfleet contact. An experimental weapon has been stolen from Daystrom Station. She has to figure out what it is and why. Hilariously, Riker and Picard are given cadet-style bunks to sleep on, compliments of Shaw. 7 calls them to the observation lounge. She demands they tell her what's really going on. Picard explains that he didn't want to tell her the truth because it could jeopardize her career. 7 proceeds to explain her dissatisfaction with her role. Her arc is ultimately uninteresting to me this season. I never really liked 7. Sorry about that, I just found her kind of complainy and generally overly confrontational on Voyager. Thankfully, 7 does come to the aid of Picard and disobeys Shaw's orders by taking the Titan directly to the Riken system. They detect Beverly's ship inside a nebula. 7 is going to be in serious trouble with Shaw now. Riker and Picard thank her for what she's done and head off on a shuttle. Meantime, Rafi heads to Starfleet recruitment because she has reason to believe that there's going to be an imminent terrorist attack. There's some impressive CG as the entire building is not only destroyed, as you saw in the trailer, but pulled through a portal and dumped onto another part of the city. Riker and Picard make their way to Beverly's ship, and I love the bit of banter between these two old friends. Riker remarks about Picard's hands being stiff and his knees are killing him. As long as they don't have to move or shoot, they should be fine. They find Beverly suspended in some kind of medical isolation pod. Riker is taken captive briefly by a young man with an English accent. Picard convinces him he's not a threat. Riker decks the young man and seizes his weapon. This man is Beverly's son, but there's something about him that's very familiar. Boy, I wonder who his father is. Meantime, another enemy vessel appears, the one that's been hunting them, a massive warship. It's the Shrike. The episode ends. The first episode is definitely a good teaser, setting up the initial mystery surrounding Beverly, her son, and the stolen weapon from Daystrom. As you may imagine, it'll all interconnect in time. What I truly appreciate about Season 3 is the interplay and dialogue between the characters. It is just wonderful to have Patrick Stewart and Jonathan Frakes playing off each other once again. Unlike the first episode of Season 2, which was all over the place, this opening installment of Season 3 is actually coherent and has a point to it. The plot moves along at a decent pace. There's enough intrigue to keep you invested. Shaw may not yet be likeable, but he provides much needed tension and conflict in the story. He's a good foil throughout the season for Picard and Riker, and I think this is especially true in scenes like the tense dinner scene in order to keep things spicy enough. What I can say is that the story arc of Season 3 is very tightly constructed, efficient and on point, with no real extraneous material or distractions. Seasons 1 and 2 have a kind of made up as it goes along kind of feel, but this is not the case with Season 3. It's well constructed and thought out from beginning to end. Now, it's not without its flaws. I will point those out as the season progresses. Now, I will say I'm not a big fan of mystery box story arcs. I really wish this season was primarily standalone, with a couple of two-parters perhaps. Standalone Star Trek is far better in my view because there's a real skill in being concise and condensing a complete story into 45 minutes. It also means that anyone can drop into the season at any point and watch a single episode without any problems. Mystery box means you can't really watch one episode in isolation. The season is also let down by swearing, as I've mentioned before, along with 2 F-bombs in episodes 4 and 8. It's unnecessary and profoundly un-Star Trek. Star Trek Strange New Worlds, for all its faults, at least proves it's possible for modern Trek to do standalone episodes again, and brighter set lighting. Many lessons in terms of characterization and storytelling were learned in Picard Season 3, but one lesson appears to have not been learned, which is that of the visual aesthetic, which is important. I won't mince my words here. In my humble opinion, this is not a particularly visually pleasing season to look at. Now, I'm not talking about the shot composition in terms of the cinematography, which is really, really good. I'm specifically talking about the lighting and the color grading. By that I mean the interior shots on set. I'm not talking about the absolutely fantastic space shots, which are really beautiful. The sets are not just darkly lit in places. The color palette appears to be slightly desaturated. Look at Star Trek Generations, for example. This is a great example of how to do some darker set lighting without becoming too dark and without desaturating the colors. Wonderful blues, oranges, reds, golds. Generations is a gorgeous film to look at. Season 3 of Picard appears to be, in my view, a product of the edgy dark sci-fi television era, which I never understood and which Discovery has been doing since it began. But ultimately, this does not detract from my enjoyment of the season because it is a really good story and a wonderful tribute to the Next Generation cast. 1 episode down, 9 more to go. Stay tuned for next week's episode entitled Disengage.